wanting a relationship and needing one are two different things.
Interesting.
Right?
What do you mean needing one?
Like feeling like I need one because it's going to fix me.
I got you.
If you love me, then maybe I'm worthy enough.
I got you.
I was in a pattern I realized in my life for so much of it, so much wounding that I wasn't aware of yet.
Yeah.
I was still a little asleep at the wheel, where it was like, I'm going to date this guy and go guy to guy to guy, like Band-Aids. Like, ooh, maybe if they love me or they're into it, then I'm going to feel enough. I'm going to be okay.
Can't be contained.
That's what I'm talking about. I was listening to this. There was this like comparison of music back in the day versus music today.
Okay.
And it was like back in the day, it was like, to the left, oh, no, and a box to the left. And then today it's like, fuck, busy, like, fuck, pussy, bitch.
Oh my gosh. Did you see there was a comedian that did a bit sort of about today's music and stuff? And at Christmas, there was the Christmas song, Baby It's Cold Outside.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I guess it got canceled.
Yeah, why did that get canceled?
Because I think I don't know. I only repeat things that I hear. I don't always fact check them. Okay, so anyone listening,
My mom
check
told me
for yourself.
that too.
But I think it was rapey was the thing.
Okay.
So this comedian though does a bit of like the lyric from that song and then a lyric of like the chart topping like wet pussy bitch. And it's like, oh right. I don't actually know if I understand.
Dude, it's so wild. Like, I was listening to some rap the other day. I used to be so into rap when I was younger. Like, I would drive my little Mazda Miata or whatever the fuck, Presidia. It was a Mazda, 1993 silver Mazda Presidia. That's what it was. And I would like blast rap as I'm like going to dance. I thought I was so rad.
Yeah.
Remember that time you made a rap self-love song?
I did. It's a personal development rap song. It is still what's it called when it's right before release? That's where it's been. That's where it's been.
It's been there for 3 years.
That's where it's been living. I wrote it. I was inspired. I was on a flight to Thailand, I believe, or maybe London. It was just flowing out of me. So clearly, probably meant to be, and really quite a jam. And I did it
God.
oh my goodness, what was the tune? It was a tune to a gangster rap song.
It was, but now I'm forgetting which one
I think it was maybe Get Your Roll On by Big Timers.
Probably.
Real classic.
I remember just getting this like random text to you and being like, that's so good.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, but it needs to be released like in its full glory with like a video that does it justice with like a bling
100%.
chain that says like love, or something where
I
like,
think it's a niche market, and if anyone can do it, I think you are the person.
I love that. I love that. But yes, I too used to jam out in my Chrysler green minivan with no heat.
Now we're talking.
Now it was in Florida, so people think you don't need heat, but that's because I've never been in North Florida in the winter. It's
Oh,
basically Georgia. It's cold.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I actually, every day is a school day. I just thought, Florida, I literally thought that Florida, that's hot. You don't need heat, but no.
Yeah.
Florida's a big place.
It's a big state.
It's a big state. Here we go.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy we're having this conversation. I'm glad that we didn't dress the same, because normally when we show up at parties, we look very similar and we have the same name.
Right. So it's like, do you do it on purpose? No, we're just vibing. We're just connected.
We're just vibing. So we were talking about how essentially you were over the other night, actually. We were sipping some tea, or maybe I was sipping tea. I can't remember.
Were having tea.
We were having tea.
I spilled a little tea. I drank a little tea.
Oh, that's right.
I was like, is this sensitive? Because it's probably fine. I got it. It's mostly on me, so I think we're all right.
Sensitive. The amount of shit I spill on that couch. Eric's like going to kick me out soon,
Yeah.
He literally sent me a video today of me not doing my dishes, and he's like, bro.
You're like, I am good at a lot of things. But, it wouldn't be fair if we were good at everything.
Exactly. I got to keep it interesting,
Right? Like handwriting. It's not my strongest suit. One time my girlfriend was working with me. She's like, you have terrible handwriting. I was like, I do not. She's like, what does this say? I'm like, I don't know. But
if you can't read it, that's a problem.
I'm like, I can't be good at everything.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
you know how many things I'm good at? Come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
Apparently, the last guest that was on and my videographer just informed me that I'm terrible at responding to text messages.
It could be true.
Am I bad with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you thought I was going to swoop in for the save on that one. But, yeah.
Can you please tell a white lie?
I feel like inconsistent. Sometimes fast, other times not as
it's
much.
like immediately or like never.
Right.
And Patrick asked me, he's like, we had a little text message therapy session before you walked into the studio. And he's like, what is that? And I was like, let me think about it. I'm like, it just feels so overwhelming to my system. I'm like, is there coaches out there that help with like text message overwhelm?
trauma.
Yeah, text message trauma.
We will file that. We'll get a system. Yeah.
Can someone validate my experience, please, and tell me I'm not crazy?
We'll put that somewhere. That makes sense to me.
But at my house the other night, we were talking about how, you have a true gift when it comes to relationships. And I feel like whenever I bring something to you and I'm like, hey, this is happening and this is happening, you have a way of looking at it from such a what's it called when you don't take sides, like objective view?
Yeah, neutral,
objective
yeah.
view. And like you can really see the interplay of how I'm showing up and how he's showing up and what's going on here. And it's so important. I'll tell like a quick story here. Eric and I got engaged a year ago now, which is crazy. It's so funny. October 1st, we got engaged. And then on October 1st, both of us forgot that we got engaged that day. And his mom reminded us. I was like, oops.
I love you though.
I love you. We're still getting married. We're still doing
But you
this.
both did. So I feel like no one's in trouble, right?
Exactly. Him and I were like, man, we're bad. And the 12 months after us getting engaged was just like, whoa, God, that was hard.
Right.
Man. And there was multiple times where I was like, yo, what is going on here? And my survival strategy is like, get the fuck out. My survival strategy is like flee. Like,
Right.
let's go. I'm out. Like, let's, right. And so it's really beautiful to be able to like bring that to you and for you to see like, oh, no, here's how all of our pieces and parts are playing in these adult bodies. Like it looks like it's two adults, trying to get their shit together, but it's actually all of these parts and all of these pieces. And our mutual mentor, Raina, says we don't have an inner child, we have an inner preschool.
Oh, 1,000%.
Right?
Yeah.
And so talk about why that? Like why that mission of like really helping people reform relationships?
I think the biggest thing with relationships, and when I first got into it, is first of all, nobody teaches us how to have them. It is such an integral piece of our happiness.
That's
and
so true.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe if we had a good role model with our parents, we may have picked up some things. But even if our parents happened to have a great relationship, unfortunately, though, many of us did not have parents that were in a healthy, thriving relationship. So a lot of us didn't have that model. And then if we did, even if it was good, we may not have known what was their secret sauce. What did they do? Did they have check-ins at night? Did they have a really passionate sex? Like what was it that made it great?
I just thought about my parents having sex. Ugh.
You're welcome. You're welcome out there, everyone. And so what was it? And, it's just wild because the things that we learn in school, calculus and Latin, I mean, some people out there use calculus still, but like mostly like not I, And, we spend so much time on these things that really don't have the level of impact on what does it mean to have self-esteem and self-love and self-worth and to have relationships. And, when we feel secure in our intimate partnerships, it's much like secure attachment with a parent. We more bravely and courageously go out in the world. We show up as different people, different partners, different bosses, business owners. And then that ripples out. Like the impact just ripples to other people and like our level of compassion, what we're able to do. And so one of the biggest things is we don't really learn. Yeah. And then I feel like Hollywood and society kind of sells us this sack of shit of what it should be like. We should meet and it should just be magic. And if not, they're probably fucked up.
Yeah.
Right. There's never this like, what's happening for you? I don't even know if I can think of a movie where it's like, I wonder what's happening for me
what's
right
going on
now.
Inside my body.
Right? It's just this like, oh, it doesn't work or what's the thing? And we have survival patterns. Is it get out of here? Is it go closer? Is it that anxious attachment of like get in and pull them closer and smother them? And, so it's this wild thing and it's relationships are one of the things that have the capacity to really set us soaring or bring us to our knees.
Dude, 100%. It's wild.
Right?
Would you say the same is for romantic relationships and friendships, or is that statement more true for romantic relationships?
I would say it's very, very true for romantic relationships.
Okay.
But depending on what else you have going on with your system and your parts, we can have that same level of abandonment or because something's getting triggered, right? Something's coming up that we're afraid they're going to leave or we're going to lose them or what that means.
That's right.
So it can be there in all relationships. And a lot of the things that I teach and I work with people on relationships, it applies to all relationships and then maybe even to a deeper level in those intimate relationships.
I so agree with you. It's like when Eric and I are so solid, and we've been in a really solid place for like months now, and I'm so grateful for that because the first year after getting engaged was like real intense for both of us. But my relationship to work is so much easier. My like everything. What was the words that you use? It's like when that connection is there, it allows you to just like expand and catapult into the world and be seen because there really is that felt sense of safety. And when that relationship is ruptured or there's
Threat to it.
threat to
Yeah.
it, it's all consuming. It's so emotionally expensive. And then we can't pour ourselves into the things that, light us up.
Totally. And then the thing that happens all the time in relationships is so something's coming up for us. And then this is where often things go. So we come to share really responsibly.
I would like to share my experience with you.
And it's human nature when we love someone, we don't want to hurt them.
Yeah.
Right. So the first thing that often happens, especially when we're not taught, so we're not aware yet, is they're going to defend or they're going to justify why they did it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to say, even if I've got my phrasing, when this happened, I felt, and they're like, no. Or I did it because, I did it because you left your dishes in the sink, or I did it, and then my experience is invalidated. Now something's coming up for you. Now I'm going to tell you the evidence and the example of why. And now we're in lawyer mode, right?
Yes.
We're just giving exhibit A, exhibit B. And now what's happening too is we're getting more and more in disconnection. And that's not where we want to be. And so one of the things in relationships that's so important too is people lose sight that they're teammates.
Yeah.
Right? We go into adversaries versus allies. And really, if we can help them see the disconnection is the enemy, right? We're getting caught in a trap.
I love that.
We're getting caught in this pattern that is pulling us apart. And at different times, one partner is going to have more resource than the other, but it's a skill. It's learning to catch that we're going there, learning to see that we're about to go on this roller coaster ride. We get caught like in a crazy eight, like a loop, you're coming. And then I'm doing all of my things. I'm triggered and then you're triggered and we're caught in it. So it's really like, how do we slow down and pull back? And that's where working with somebody or having a third party can just be so
helpful.
vital and so helpful. Because if we're talking and we're triggered, I'm not hearing likely what you're actually saying.
Yeah.
It's not even getting in. A lot of times too, I'm trying to get my needs met. All the parts are up. So you're telling me something and I'm probably not really listening because I'm just thinking about what I need to say next because I need you to know. And we're caught. And then sometimes you could say something, but what I take from what you're saying, I'm taking it through my lens, through my filter. So it's not actually conveying. So having somebody else be like, actually, that's not what I heard her say. What I heard her say. And then the other thing that we get caught in relationships is we'll talk about what's at the surface.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, hey, your dishes were here. You didn't do the dishes. Right? Common thing. Well, really, it's not about the dishes.
Yeah.
It's about when I didn't do the dishes, how did that make you feel?
Can we call Eric?
Right?
Hey, it's not about the dishes.
Eric, I would just like to know, so how did that make you feel?
It's funny because he did it in a funny way. Like he wasn't like, these are your dishes. He did it in like a hilarious way. But I think there's something there.
Well, there's probably a little something there, right? And maybe there's an agreement and there's going to be compromise for people that, okay, I can live with the fact that maybe I'm going to do more dishes than you. But let's say it's something too where somebody's not saying it in a playful way and they're really frustrated. Oh, I'm so frustrated. The dishes are in the sink again.
Yeah.
Well, that person often really does think I am having this response because I am so mad that you won't do the dishes.
Yeah.
But if we can slow down and help them explore a little bit what's under the surface, a beautiful thing happens for both partners. Because number one, if I'm so upset about the dishes, you're thinking, but I do like so many other things, and then maybe you're triggered at like, how is this even a thing about the dishes? Because I do all these other great things and maybe you don't see me or appreciate me or nothing's good enough, or right? So now you're starting to have your own experience. Well, often if we can just slow down and we can have the person that's upset, it's like, when the dishes are there, how does that make you feel?
I got you.
Well, it makes me feel frustrated. It makes me feel upset. And if we can keep going, what does that make you afraid of? Well, it makes me afraid that I'm going to have to do everything all on my own. What does that remind you of from when you were a kid? And then usually you can uncover that there's these layers in there. There's this deep hurt. And then the partner also can see, oh, holy shit.
Yeah.
It's, oh my God, I'll do the dishes because it's
so there's
impact
empathy
on like such a different level. Like, when it reminds me of when I was a little kid and I was all by myself and I had to do everything.
Yeah.
oh, and in that moment when the dishes are left in the sink, I am transported right there back into that
Yeah.
at 4 years old, feeling all
That's the
alone.
wildest part, dude, with trauma work and this type of work. It's the memory takes you back to the scene of the emergency.
Totally. It
You
hijacks
know?
us.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
To a point where you're so convinced in that moment that, oh my gosh, that person, moving across town, that's the exact same thing as my dad leaving when I was 4 years old. It's like that abandonment wound. And it has like the same level of intensity where the adult is like, wait a second, they're just moving a plane ride away. It's okay. Like you'll still be friends, but the little inner child's like, no, no, no. Last time this happened, they moved away and I never saw them and it was really painful
And it didn't work
and it didn't work
out.
out and blah, 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 blah. And so it's so wild for us to just, yeah, like really, really know what we're bringing into a relationship as well.
Yeah. So one of the things too, when that's happening is like, so I've lived my whole life planning a minefield, and then
Yeah.
so has my partner,
Oh,
right?
that's right.
But we're not aware of it.
Yeah.
And then we come together and we start blowing each other's shit up. But the other one doesn't
Yeah.
even understand. There's so
Yes.
much of the like, why is it a big deal? Because
Yeah.
it wouldn't bother them.
Right. I got you.
Right. And so it's how do we slow down and start to have this like curiosity and this mutual understanding? I mean, the other thing that's amazing about relationships, it is rocket fuel for
Yeah.
growth.
Yeah.
Like personal growth and evolution if we are in an awake, conscious relationship. And then if not, I mean, it's just totally pressurized. We're going to trigger the shit out of each other. And
Yeah.
that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And when we can slow down and say like, what is happening for you? And catch myself and not go on the ride with you, but really just be like, okay, what is happening for you? And can I catch myself and have enough understanding
Yeah.
to be with that person in what it is?
Got you.
So one of the things that's beautiful too when working with couples is, of course, you can do the work together. And there's this beautiful uncovering and understanding because it's miscommunication, it's assumptions being made. One of the other
Yeah.
things that I feel like is so vital is we see the world in a certain way. We assume they do too. They don't.
Yeah.
They see it in a different way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Eric and I have had so many conversations about this, like unpacking like how I see the world versus how he sees the world. And I'm like, that is two separate ways. So of course there's going to be so much confusion and a difference of opinion. And yeah, anyway.
So when we have that assumption that we think it's very clear why we are doing
Yeah.
something because we know why we are doing it.
Yeah.
If we do not share that, the other person is constantly making meaning and giving meaning. So it's, oh, I'm going to not make dinner tonight because I know that I need to get the laundry or do this or whatever it is because he needs that for his meeting tomorrow or something. Well, then he comes home and he's upset because she doesn't care about me because she didn't do this. And it's because there's not that communication. Had I said, oh, I'm not going to do this because in my mind, this is a priority and this
Yeah.
allows tomorrow to be more successful for you, or this is why I'm doing it. But when we don't communicate, the other person is always giving it meaning and it's likely wrong. I mean, wrong in the sense of incorrect as to our intention.
I got you. So the question that I get from my audience a lot is, can I be in a relationship with someone who's not willing to do the work, who's not willing to grow? And I'm pretty sure I know your I'm pretty sure I know your answer on this, but maybe you can explain to them an experience share or like something that illustrates just the contrast between a relationship that's not willing to grow and a relationship that is willing to grow, and just maybe give some advice there.
Okay. So a couple things. So when people come to me, because the question I get a lot is like, when do I go? When do you like call it? When
Yeah.
do you throw in the towel?
Oh, that's
right?
an interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I always say is, okay, so the first thing that you want to know is, do we have a shared vision for the future? Right? Are we headed in the same direction? Because we can work through it and we can do a lot of these things, but like if you want to go there and I want to go there, then let's evaluate and be honest about like where are we heading? The other thing that I would always say, and then we'll dig deeper into this, I'm like, and are you both interested and willing
Yeah.
to do the work? Now, doing the work can mean different things to different people, right? And sometimes people get attached that it needs to be done in their way.
That was an interesting lesson, actually, with Eric and I at the beginning of our relationship. You and I have been in like a similar program together, and I was like, he needs to do that program at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, no. His system and his soul is actually on a different path, and he needs something completely different for his evolution. And then I got to this place where like I get to trust my man and trust that he's doing what is best for him. And ultimately, in hindsight, I'm so glad he didn't do that program. And I'm so glad that he chose to do the things that he was going to do.
Well, and isn't it interesting how also too, when we want to establish safety, we want to control.
Yeah.
Right. And so we want to desperately get our needs met. So it's like, I need this thing and I need you to do this thing. And I had a similar experience with Brad.
Yeah.
And it was this growth is a big value for me. Right. I mean, it's like what I do. I feel like it's like, on the mission. It's a big part of like, what can I learn and what can I see? And also for me too, it has been a way to alleviate suffering. Right?
Yeah.
Like this doesn't feel good. I don't want to be here. So what am I going to do? I'm going to like go head into it.
For sure.
Which I do things with a certain level of intensity. And it's not fair to assume that everybody's going to do that. But also too, I got very attached to like, he needs to do it in my way because does he not value growth?
Yeah.
And like, what if he doesn't value that? Like, is this going to work out? Are we meant to be? Is this going to, but being able to pause and pull back of like, oh, he does like it. In his way.
And in his own timing.
Yes.
Eric has like a very slow pace, slower than mine. Like Raina calls him the mountain moon man, and then she calls me a shooting star. Yeah. She's like, you're just like fast, and Eric's like slow, right? So yeah, there's their own way, and then it's in their own time.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. And I think too, there's a thing of like, do we want to be with a partner that we want to control? And ultimately, does that work? Because having influence is a different thing.
Yeah.
Right? Being able to have enough respect for each other where we're at, trust, right? And a lot of times we don't have that because we're scared because there's parts that are afraid. There's parts that like, I'm not going to get my needs met or this isn't going to work out or you're not going to see me in the way that I'm desperately craving if you don't do this thing. So I think, okay, willing to do the work, like spectrum. I would say you need somebody open and interested to look at things in a new way. That their way or their view is not the only one. I would say that's one of the biggest thing in relationships is we get stuck in I'm right, right? When we talked about the evidence and the lawyering. And the goal is not always to be like, oh, you were right or oh, you were right and coming to that side. It's going, oh, I could see how you see it that way.
Totally.
Right? Perfect example is like we're both looking up and you're saying the sky is blue and I'm like, no, it's green. And you're like, she's crazy. And then you walk over and you see I'm looking through a stained glass window. And oh, it is. It is. From where you're standing, I can see it that way. Or from the way that I grew up or my life experience, I see through a lens that's looking and filtering in a different way. And so can we slow down and can we find that? So I think the biggest thing is if they're very not willing, and I would say not willing is if somebody says you're the problem.
Yeah.
And that's where it ends, that is challenging to work with.
Right.
Now, I will also say, though, a relationship can be dramatically influenced by one person shifting. So even if one individual, and usually one individual has a little more awareness emotionally or a little more growth maybe in that arena because we're going to have different things that we're good at, which is what allows passion and polarity, right? If everything was the same, that doesn't create that spark and that pulse. So differences are good. Differences are what lead to like passion. We don't always think that that is true. We're like, I don't like that about you at all. It makes me uncomfortable. Stop it.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Make it stop. Make it stop.
Stop that. But when we have those differences in looking at it, but it would be, so if they say that, no, this is the end of it and like, you're the problem, challenge. But then again, okay, so let's say I'm in this situation, even if my partner's like, you're the problem, because I might have had one like that, name my husband. Love you, babe.
Wait, give me the context that he was like,
You know what? We went through a period, and this is the thing too. Relationships are not about always being magical and bliss.
Yeah.
It's about we are going to have bumps.
Right.
Right? We are going to
it's
hit
like
those.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and it's like when again and again and again.
But it's how do we move through that?
How do we repair the rupture?
Yes. How do we repair it? And I really do believe, and I've seen it time and time again with myself and with clients, it is an opportunity for deeper understanding, deeper connection, and an even better situation on the other side, right? If we can slow down and get into that. But there was a period that was hard for Brad that we were going through something and it was hard and really it felt to him like that's your thing.
That's your stuff.
That's your thing. Also, I'm very open about sharing, oh, I had this in my past and this in my, so it almost made it sort of easy to say, well, you have some things. It's like, I know, but I process those things. And then I could like point a finger back and be like, you have things.
Look at your things.
Are you looking at your things in the way I need you to right now? And so then that's frustrating, right? And then some of the wounding that I went into is the kind of, you don't see me, you don't understand me, I have to do this all by myself, which is some of my wounding, right? Like, be with me in this, be here with me. And so one of the things that I did is we had done work together, but also too, one way that one person can greatly influence is to go do the work on themselves, on their triggers, right? Because if I work and process my triggers, well, now when he does something, I go, oh, he's having a thing. Like, oh, that's him. That's his 8-year-old. And then, because the thing that he's really needing and that we're always needing our trigger is somebody to just be like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
I'm here with you.
That's like one of the most validating things,
You're doing a good job.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I feel like when I'm like in it and I'm spinning and Eric just comes out to me and he's like, hey, you're good. You're doing amazing. You got this.
Totally.
And I'm like, I don't need you to take my pain away. I don't need you to fix it. I don't need you to do anything. But like, just be here with me in this moment and tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me I'm not crazy, bitch.
Well, and one of the things too, like a big difference between men and women is we're wired very differently. And even in same-sex relationships with someone who's maybe more masculine or more feminine, men just want to fix shit, right? They like love us and they don't want us to be in pain. So they're like, oh my God, I know. And you're like, stop.
It is excruciating for Eric to not, because that was like a big thing of in our relationship. I think every relationship goes through that where like the guy's like, oh, I don't fix it. And Eric's like, okay, what do I do? And I just remember like the days where he's like, I don't know what to do. And then he would like role play like what I've said in the past. I'm like, just say this. And then he would be like, I see your experience.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Now he's amazing, but it was so funny during that period. I'm like, babe, you were trying so hard and it's so cute.
Well, okay, I remember. So one of the things I love to give couples is like a relationship cheat sheet. It literally is like, okay, this makes me feel loved. When I'm upset, I need this.
I like
some blanket statements, right? And now the blanket statement might not always be true.
Yeah.
But like mostly it is. I told Brad, I'm like, hey, honey, if like the rest of our relationship, this is all you ever said, you'd get it right like 99% of the time. That sounds so hard. Right? I'm right here with you. And I love you. And I'm not leaving. I can remember.
That is hilarious. He's like reading it off the paper.
1000%. Because there are things that regulate us and we don't understand it about each other. Because we give love in a certain way doesn't mean that we receive it in the same way. Doesn't mean they receive it in that way. So it's like, how do we start to share? And how do we, like, this is one of the biggest things of relationships. And I feel like I probably should have even started with this in the beginning of like, why did I get into it? It's like to demystify it.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that it's this hard, complicated, convoluted thing. And it's like, no, there is a roadmap. There is a science to it. Just no one showed you. And so like, let's slow down. Let's look at this makes me feel loved. This makes me feel terrible. This is, and if we have that for each other, it's just like, here, wait, hold on. You're upset. Oh no.
So I made one of those for myself after Eric and I had a blow up. This was last year. And it was called How to Love Me. And I went through, but dude, I did it when I was triggered. And like the amount of detail, like I'm like, this is complicated.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to simplify that and like put it on a nice PDF and maybe get it printed and,
Well, and again, okay, so one of the things that comes up a lot of time, and I'd say this is more common for women to feel, he should just know. I'm like, only if you want to never get what you want.
That's so true. That's so true. That's so
like,
true.
Set him up for success.
Because he, like you and I talked about the other night when you spilled tea all over my house.
Just like on myself, though. I took it home with me on my pants.
They want to be our heroes.
Want to be our heroes.
Yes.
Like, love us, trying desperately. And when we give them some feedback that like they didn't, that can be way more crushing and impactful than they show sometimes.
100%.
Right?
100%.
And one of the things too, like, look at how men are wired. Like, in life, their success and hierarchy is like, how many and how fast can I crush problems?
Right. That's right.
That's their success in the world. And so we're like, stop that. Just know me.
Yeah.
see my insides.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know what you mean.
Yeah.
Because they
100%.
don't know what
Yeah,
we mean.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
One of the things they also don't understand is like, men can be with each other and be like, "Blah, blah, I don't like you," and 5 minutes later be fine.
Yeah.
They just need to know that when they say something to us, it's like a tic tac implanted all the way in here.
Data
And-
point.
yeah, and I need you to say that. You know, like I remember one time Brad and I got into a fight, and he had said a few things. I don't know if it was a fight; it was more him saying some things and me getting really triggered. And I held on to them. It was like a year later, and we were at a wedding, and I started crying, and I'm like, "Well, I don't want to get married if you're never going to be excited." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "You said that." You know, you said that. What? He's like, "You've been holding on to that." I'm like, "Well, you didn't never say you didn't mean it." You know, and
yeah,
and
it's like you need to undo it.
you know, well, because he had said other things that he thought like, oh, we're good and that's cleared up. But, you know, like women will hold on to things in a different way than men will.
100%.
You know, and so it's a relearning. It's giving each other this roadmap for success that says, say this, do this. Like, and when we are flooded or emotional or triggered or whatever word we want to use, there are certain things that calm us down, right? Like for you, Eric can come over and hold you and be like, it's going to be okay. This is what, and it's amazing. I remember too, the first time I gave it to Brad, we were camping. We're at the RV. Like, I remember it because it was so hilarious. I'm crying about something, and he is like a robot, but you can tell he's searching his brain, and he's pulled the file, right? And he's like, "Oh no, that seems so hard." I mean, like in the most robotic way. And he's like, "I love you, and I'm here for you." And I'm like, "It really does feel really good. It's not just in the textbook."
It's so funny.
You know,
it's like they are trying, and they do want to make us happy, and they are heroes. And I think that's like the biggest thing. One of my mentors told me, Philip McKernan, I believe it was, he said, always assume positive intent of your partner.
Yep.
And that has been such a game changer for us. Like, you know, whatever it is, whether it's a comment or whether it's whatever it is, it's like always assume positive intent. And if we assume positive intent, then chances are it's not going to get us so wound. It's like, oh, there's a really good reason for why that happened. I'm excited to figure out what that reason is, you know?
Totally. John Gottman talks about a similar thing where he talks about positive sentiment override, meaning that we're sort of in this positive place. Like the emotional bank account is at a surplus, right? And they come in, here's an example, like they come in and they're maybe not the warmest and they're like, "Oh, must have had a bad day."
Yeah.
Right? You write it off, that positive intent, that's not about me. I'm not going to take it personally. I'm not going to be triggered. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Negative sentiment override, or not assuming like positive intent. Maybe you're at this place where like things have been a little strained. We're in that place of like adversaries versus allies, that disconnection. They come in and it's like, oh, they always do that, you know, and then it's a whole different thing. But yes, if you can remember like, okay, is that true? Or like, what else is possible? Like, I know that they love me. So what else could be true in this situation? So that's where one of the things too, I feel like we segued. A person can work their own triggers and their own experience and start to see more clearly and show up in a different way, because triggers are hitting back and forth. So if all of a sudden I, as one part of the equation, start to be more grounded and start to see that more clearly and be less reactive, well, now there's room for this whole dynamic to shift, even though that person didn't really do anything yet. And then also, too, when we start to show up in a different way, love in a different way, like one of the things that happens often in a relationship, we show up to give. We're excited. We're leaving love notes. Like it's all of the thought of how do we delight them? And then there is a point in time in which it often switches to what am I getting? What are they giving to me? Then it's this standoff. So if we can even come back to this place of like seeing them with fresh eyes and being in this place of like, what was it like in the beginning? And what did I give? That can radically shift as well, because another huge thing, when we are hurting, we forget that there is another person over there likely suffering just as much. And almost always feeling the exact same way, even if they don't show it.
And wanting the same thing.
That's
what I come back to with Eric all the time. It's like, babe, we want the same thing. Like we want the same thing. And we're too caught up in our righteousness right now because we're like stuck in our parts. But as soon as our parts calm down and we're out of competing on righteousness, we come to this place where all we actually desire is connection and love it's like, that's it.
That's it. And so how do we be here and remembering to like get that stuff out of the way? And so one of the things that's so vital too is like in relationship, creating time and intention to make sure that that's fostered and that's nurtured, because being together all the time, just quantity doesn't mean that there's actually
This
connection.
is actually a huge thing in relationships that I think is so important to talk about. It's quality, and how are you making those moments matter, and how are you allowing each other to be seen? This is a huge thing. Like I tell Eric all the time, like even like 10 minutes of pure presence and connection is so resourceful to my system. It like again, going back to what we talked about earlier, it's like when that's there, there's so much I can do in the world because I feel so satiated in our connection. I'm like, let's fucking go.
Totally.
But
And
when that's not there, I'm like, where is
I feel
it?
sad.
I don't know where it is.
Totally. And then what's that feeling like?
What was that impression? What did I just do?
I'm not
That was
sure what
like-
it
that
was. I was like,
E.T..
I'm playing the piano.
I don't know what's going on. Dude, I just want to say that was a great choice not to drink Topo Chico. I've been holding back burps, but I'm not stopping.
I've been like having some burps. I like let them come out my nose, perhaps. I don't know where they went, but yeah, the bubbles are
It's
not.
like
I love it. It's
I don't
delightful.
learn.
I enjoy it, and then I'm like, oh no,
I know.
it's better than.
I'm just
farts,
gonna
I
keep
guess.
going. I'm not a quitter.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna quit on this
you
Topo
just,
Chico.
you just keep on in there, So, but yeah, relationships is such a doozy. One of the other things I think too, and a good example of what you're giving is like when he can be with you and just like that presence in that moment, or tell
Yeah.
you when you are flooded. One of the things that's often different too with men that they don't understand about women is we just get too full. It's like a bucket that gets too full and we just need to dump it out, which comes to that whole don't solve my problems, just like hold the bucket so I can dump into it. And then we're empty and we're usually
Yes.
fine and we're regulated now and we've solved.
And you know what's been a game changer in our relationship is Eric being connected to my Flow app, my like period app, so he knows like what the hell's going on each day. He once asked me if I could wear a cowbell when I was PMSing.
There we go. There we go. That's something I haven't even told couples. I'm like, you know what you need to do? Let's share the flow chart here.
Exactly.
But-
That's good though. It's like, and then he's like, oh, I get it. So there's so much more compassion.
right.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're about to go on a
We're
ride.
about to go on a ride. Buckle
Yeah.
up. We're going on Skelly Airlines again.
Yeah. But one of the things that's amazing and can be so fast, and so I want to give like men out there hope and possibility, is if you can just be present with your partner for a little bit and let her unload, literally within moments, the emotion can flood.
100%.
And like flood and leave, I mean.
It's wild how quickly the somatic system can just like cycle through that energy, and then we're like back.
We're
like,
back.
what was I mad about? I
Yeah.
didn't care about that. It's like I am satiated, I am safe, I am reconnected. All right, let's go.
Totally.
And it's a touch and it's a glimpse. It's like not complicated.
Yeah. But again, it's the not taught, and to them it's confusing. To a partner it doesn't make sense. But when we can say, hey, in general this is how this one operates, and in general this is how this one, and it's an experiment to figure out like what works. Like, is that the right thing? Is it not? This is the phrase I want you to say. Oh, turns out I don't like that. I want you to tell me this. And what does that look like?
Yeah, I guess it's just like sex, right? Don't do this. Don't stick a finger up my butt. Don't
Totally.
do,
Well,
whatever.
It's about guiding in all directions. But again, sharing, and I understand that sometimes it feels more romantic of that whole they should just know. But again, if we want to get what we want, like whether it's in the bedroom.
I love that. If we want to get what we want, we got to over communicate. I mean, that's like me going into my business and saying to my employees, like, you guys should just know what I want. Or like, you guys should just know what the vision is. Like, how do you not know what the vision is? Like,
That's so weird of you.
That's so weird.
You
It's
suck.
like the amount of over communication I have in my organization of like our values and our vision and this and that and like I'm over communicating it so much that they're like, and still it's not 100% clear. You know what I'm saying? Like there's always that loss of translation. So in a relationship, if it's completely not communicated, and then there's this assumption that they just should know, it's like, you ain't gonna win, girl.
Totally.
You ain't gonna win.
One of the things too that I feel like comes up in relationship is, so a lot of times, and this is a great comparison with the business, right? Like, would I ever go into my business and be like, figure it out, you suck, right? No. Because like,
well, maybe on Tuesdays, but
right.
okay.
But then that's on us, right?
Right.
Like, oh, maybe I didn't deliver the message or the memo or the vision. So there's often a double standard with relationships. Like, oh, when it comes to a good business, what do we do? Oh, it takes work. It takes effort.
Yeah.
We want a healthy body. What do we do? Ooh, it takes work. It takes effort. When it comes to a relationship, it should just work. Why?
Yes.
Right? This whole thing of like,
Yes.
oftentimes when there's something in our life that we're proud of, that we like, that we resonate with, it's, oh, how'd you get there? I worked hard.
I hired a mentor.
Right? I did
the things.
But in the relationship, again, I think largely no model, and then society being like, it should just work.
My therapist brought something interesting to me the other day. We were talking, and she's like, you know what? The easiest place to borrow time from is your relationship if you need it for another area of your life, right? And so in this case, it was like work. It's like it's so easy to borrow time from my relationship, but then why? Like I rarely borrow time from work. I don't know. It's just such an interesting concept. It's like, what if we were to really prioritize our relationship, like prioritize the other things that we value?
So I think just being aware and eyes open for like, where's the double standards? Like, where's the things that we're doing in a way like that? And I think that's one of the things too, where where are we making the time to be intentional? Do we have check-ins? Do we have weekly dates?
Those have saved us.
Because it's,
oh God,
right? It's like a flower. We're not watering it. We're not nurturing it. It's going to die.
It's going to die.
It's going to.
Yeah.
And maybe you can revive it, but maybe not. Maybe there's too much hurt. Maybe it's too far gone. And so it's, one of the things too is I think a lot of times people think, oh, we're going to get some help when it's broken. That's the hardest time. Now, if you're there, by all means, go get some support. But get some support when it's like, hey, we want to optimize.
That's it.
We want to look at like, how do we do this even better? I feel like the best gift, my husband was like, you need to sell like a wedding. Like people buy you sessions as a wedding gift for people. Like how do you set it up as like, this is this beautiful thing. And this is
actually, you should do that. I went to a wedding expo the other day. It was a terrible expo, but I went to it. I was like, what's happening?
That's me. I have a booth in the corner.
You should though.
I got one of the what's it called? The ticker where things were like the words flash by from like the 80s. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh my God. Yeah.
I feel like it reminds me of the stock exchange. I don't know what it's like. I can help you.
Samantha Hunter, relational counseling. Come over here. But there was one of those people there,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I was like, that is really smart. Because guess what? They don't sell that in the magazines. They don't tell you that. Like that, it was like a shock to me. So it's like that's a great niche, dude. Pre-wedding engagement. But like you're gonna get engaged and then how's the leg?
It's asleep.
Do you want me to kick it?
I don't know. Need something. It's having trauma. My foot's like, what did you do?
This leg was kind of hurting, so I was just trying to massage it with my glass bottle.
Don't notice me. I'm just
Do we have any massagers in the studio, John? Like that would be great, Can we, after my drum set, I told John I want to get a drum set in here.
That seems pretty practical.
It does. I think so. Right there. And I'll say can't be contained. And then every so often I'll just get up and start drumming, when we say something great, I'll be like, brunch.
Yeah.
It's going to be good.
I did that.
Oh, yeah. It is crazy, the statistic around divorce. And it's like, okay, so the statistic is like 50%, right? Is it more than that now?
It's not good. And unfortunately, it's on the rise. And I think one of the other things that has shifted too is it's more acceptable today to be like, oh, this isn't working. Like, okay, we gave it a shot.
Friends of mine, like that happened last year where they're like they just had a baby and then they're like, we're getting a divorce. And I was like, have you like really tried everything, because it's like that's a big deal to like split apart a family when especially like a young family. And it's like, wow, man, it's like, yes, 50% is the statistic, but then how many other people are together and they're wildly unhappy? Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Well, and that's also not a solution, right? Like that's also one of the things I think too with couples work or something. Like one of the biggest things and goals I feel like in a session is people should walk in and they should leave with a little, like not everything's going to be fixed, right? One session, but a glimpse of hope and possibility of what the road forward can look like. You help them slow down and see this is where you're going wrong. This is where, now ultimately it's possible that people can get really, really clear on that and have compassion and understanding and still decide, you know what, our paths are best in opposite directions.
Do you ever just like meet with a client and you're like, you guys are fucked?
I'm like, this is
Do you ever like tell them like, this is not good?
Let's see. I'm sure I have said this is not good. There is not much that comes across my desk where I'm shocked. I'm like, you did what?
No way.
Last night you did that? Okay.
Okay. A couple of weeks ago, Eric and I were in therapy and we like go to our therapist. I was gonna say her house, but we definitely don't go to her house. That'd be weird. We went to her office and him and I, like I said, like we're in such a great place right now, and I'm so grateful for that. But we were sitting there on the couch, and I was like, man, it feels so good. We're meeting each other's needs, and there's so much love. And Eric's like, yeah, and it's been so fun and like collaborative. And she just looks at us and she goes, "What are you guys doing here?"
We're just paying you for a check-in.
She literally was like, "Okay, what are you guys doing here?" But going on that point of like, don't fix it when it's broken, like go to find newness about each other to figure out how can we continually meet each other's needs and for it to feel so good and we're not in crisis mode, because then that you're going to have the resource when crisis or things come up, because they will. You're like, we got
What's the
this.
positive deposits, right? It's like the bank account. Like,
Yeah.
how do we get it here?
Positive deposits.
Right? Like,
I
boop, boop,
like
boop.
that.
Because then when we hit crisis or something and we're taking withdrawals, it's like, oh, look, we have reserves. It's no big deal. It's not a problem, right? People would think that like, oh, we have savings for a rainy day.
Yeah.
We have savings for something that goes wrong. Same thing, So putting that in there and being like,
I just thought of like a really great thing.
I can't wait to hear
All
about
right.
it. Let me validate your idea.
You said positive deposits, and then my like marketing brain was like, positive deposits. What if we did that in our organization where you get like tokens and people, that's good. Yeah, that came from me.
Give me
and
credit.
they get like money and then they can trade it in for like shit.
They have a vending machine.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
A pause vending machine.
Can you put my face at the
I'll
top?
take some more oxygen, please.
Yeah.
How many breaths?
Yeah. But it's so great. One of the things too, I think many of us like want a relationship and like that idea. Now, some of us don't believe it's possible, right?
Yeah.
Some of us, one of the things too, I feel like we haven't talked about that is to make sure that we talk about is really like, you got to wanting a relationship and needing one are two different things.
Interesting.
Right?
What do you mean needing one?
Like feeling like I need one because it's going to fix me.
I got you.
If you love me, then maybe I'm worthy enough.
I got you.
I was in a pattern I realized in my life for so much of it, so much wounding that I wasn't aware of yet.
Yeah.
I was still a little asleep at the wheel, where it was like, I'm going to date this guy and go guy to guy to guy, like Band-Aids. Like, ooh, maybe if they love me or they're into it, then I'm going to feel enough. I'm going to be okay.
I had one of those, a couple of those, 10 of those.
And then we learn to love ourselves. Well, we learn to fix that it's not the thing. But, I would get stuck in that pattern of like, if they text back, I had a good day.
Yeah.
They didn't text back. It wasn't.
Oh, I would break hearts. I'm a bad texter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love you. I don't know what's happening.
But allowing my experience and so much to be dictated by somebody else's validation. But again, that's because I had a hole inside that I was trying to fill with something external. So I think as wanting to go into relationships, it's like checking in with ourselves first.
Yeah.
Like, where are we at? Like, what does it feel is possible or available to us? And do we feel like we have to have this thing because it's going to make us feel better? And if that's where we're at, then pausing to get curious of like, where did that belief come from? How do I feel about myself? Because we want to come from this place of feeling whole and good. And what we attract and the partner that we attract from that place is also totally different. And so saying like, I want a relationship, like I'm okay if it doesn't work out. Like I am all right because I am safe and I am loved and I know that I can handle it. And I want this to complement my life. I want this to enhance my experience and to share life with, but I don't have to have it.
So it's coming from a place of just pure abundance and adding value to what is already whole versus coming from that place of lack and needing.
Topo Chico just got me.
You got Topo Chico, it just got you. It was like, boom.
I'm like, no sun
Here
movements.
Here comes. At least we're not farting on each other.
It could be worse.
Right,
Smell-o-vision.
Smell-o-vision.
Oh, we'd only be punished.
My dad told me that there was this new television. I was telling Sam this earlier. I'm just going to say it again. That when you watch TV, you can smell. Like if it's a cooking show and they're making green Thai curry, like you could smell it. I'm like, that is amazing.
I do feel like it's probably a ride at Universal Studios or like was at some point in time.
Those things, those where you like harness up and then you go
and you're
like
like
this
in it and
it's
squirting things. Predator.
I love this. I went to Disneyland the other day.
Did you?
Dude, that place, like, I don't know how I feel about Disneyland. I'm going to be honest. It's just like a whole bunch of super unhealthy people, like, trying to have a good time. I'm like, is this fun?
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it.
And I feel like, okay, so taking even Disney out of it, and how do we feel about it? But like, I feel like is a good example of how do I feel about myself? And am I looking to fill that with something else? Like, I'll be happy when I go to Disneyland. Are we stuck in that place? And I'm sure not everybody there is. Some of those people are probably
It's
over the
generally,
moon,
it's an overstatement for sure.
satisfied in themselves.
Yeah.
But I think it's that whole thing of like, are we chasing something?
Yeah.
You know?
I find like in my experience these days, the chasing or the reaching is not as obvious as it used to be. It's quite sneaky these days.
When you do it yourself, you mean?
Yeah, like when I do it myself, or like when, like sometimes, like, how can I explain this? So historically, like 10 years ago, 7 years ago, my coping mechanisms or my like reaching was like very obvious, right? It was like have like a really great body, so that do, or like go for this really hot guy, or do like that, or like even with business back in the day, it felt very much like if I do this, then I will be.
Right.
And like the more work I've done, those things have not like vanished, but like the way in which they work themselves into my experience is so much more subtle, and it takes so much more presence to try and really get with like what is the intention behind that thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I guess what's an example? Like something that you're wanting
so
to achieve or obtain?
Yeah, an example could be let's use something like very simple, like shopping.
Okay.
Right? So for instance, it's like online shopping. It's like, okay, Sam, why are you buying $500 worth of clothes today? Like, what is that about? Like,
Right. What
let's
does that
just
give you?
Yeah, and then my mind is like, well, I need it because I'm on stage and I do and a blah 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 do. But then when I like, and that may be true, which is the sneakiness. But then like underneath the layers, I'm like, oh, there's still something there, and that's just an example. Like, I haven't really dug into this one, but that's an example of what I mean. Like, it's not the obvious chasing, but it can kind of like move its way in just like more subtle ways, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and I think with a lot of that stuff, it's getting curious as to, yeah, why do I want this? Right? And there may be some truth in, okay, I'm speaking on stage, so I want to have this because I want to look good and I want to feel good. And then I think there's the continued layers of, okay, is there a part of me that feels like I still don't, or do I need this to be accepted, or do I?
That's right.
Or does it come from a place of, I feel great when I'm this way, or this is what I want to convey? I think it's really just getting curious, and deciphering like where's it coming from?
Yeah. It's like the more work we do, it's just we got to double click, and that's the point I'm making. It's like we have to double click into it a little bit more because it's not so intense and obvious. And I know a lot of people watching this show have done a ton of work.
Ooh, I love that.
So yeah, dude, this community is like,
ooh, keep going. It's my favorite thing.
they're the best.
So they all know that everything is trauma. That's another one. Brad and I debate. I feel like I have a fantasy that Brad's going to walk into the kitchen one day and he's going to be like, babe, remember that time I told you you were wrong? Trauma is everything.
What if I just text Brad?
I see the light right now, and I'll be like, it's going to happen one day.
I'll be like,
honey.
Brad, do you know that everything is trauma?
Well, and hey, don't call it trauma. Call it life experience. Call it, but we went through the world in a certain way.
Yeah.
And it had impact, or we made observations
we
or
need to do a
decisions.
whole episode just on that. Like, can we talk about that for a second in the last like little bit of this? It's like we went through such a collective trauma, intense, all at the same time. And then it was like, it's gone.
Right.
Let's get back to normal. And our bodies, like the collective nervous system of our human body is still jacked.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah. Well, I think, many people are also not awake, right? It sounds like this is not this community, but like, how did this impact me? Or it didn't impact me? Or, so I think being able to like recalibrate and like, what does that look like? And, to be able to process and move through, because awareness is a great thing, but many people aren't even to the stage of awareness yet, right? Yeah. Awareness is the first step to say, okay, I'm aware of this thing. And then the next step is, okay, what do we do with it to actually release it from our body, release it from our system? And a lot of times too, just talking about something doesn't allow it to release.
If it loops, it can loop, right?
Well, it can even like loop and ingrain further in our thinking patterns, and we're spinning in it, right? Like, let's talk about the idea. Let's talk about the trauma. And just talking about it can allow some stuff to release. There's some literature that shows that it takes 60 to 80 hours for negative emotion to just release when we talk about it. But if we do some processing modalities
like breath work and somatic coaching and
somatic coaching, parts integration, timeline therapy, hypnotherapy, internal family systems, like do some stuff to help it release from the body. Whether it's true somatic, like breath work, things like that, or it's some of the work that helps to unlock the barrier between the conscious and the unconscious mind. But then you can do in hours or in sessions what could take years to do other ways.
That's my favorite part about breath work is teaching and then hearing people come up after and they're like, oh my God, like I've been in therapy for 20 years and nothing touched that. It's because we're going into like different vibes.
Oh my gosh. Well, I remember the first time that I was hosting that retreat and you're like, I'll come teach breath work. And I was
yeah.
like, that is so amazing and so generous of you. I love that. But I'm like, it's breathing. Not in a downplaying way, but like I had no idea yet, right? I'm like, okay, we're going to breathe. And I'm all in.
Yeah.
I'm always all in for the experience. And it's like, okay, we're going to play some music. We're going to take 3 breaths. And like right away, I'm like, like the full on thing.
Dude, I remember that day. That was actually like a beautiful, I think that was like the beginning of our friendship.
Yes, it was such a beautiful day and it was such a beautiful experience. And I remember like I had so much. I feel like, seeing colors and the visions and all the things and the full on tetany is what it's called, right?
Yeah.
When your arms are doing T-Rex.
I tell people that it's going to stay like that for 2 weeks. When I teach breathwork, I'm like, it'll only be like this for like 2 weeks.
Well, and one of the things that I think that was so neat, because yes, some people may not know this, but so I have a son, and then after that, you dated his dad. And that was,
I can't believe it's been 50 minutes and this hasn't come up.
And that was part of the blossom. But one of the things that was so neat, I thought, and like so profound is so I had a past and a history where like women had not been very supportive, even mean, right? Like I'd had a lot of life experience where women not being nice to me. So it wasn't until adulthood that I kind of got like, okay, women are friends and like friends are safe and and women supporting women. But even when it was first like women supporting women, it's like, are we? Waiting for the backstab, waiting for the knife in the back, waiting for the betrayal. And the one thing I think that was like so extra magical for me that day with the breath work is here you were, we had dated the same person, and like been through this experience and we're not competitors. We're not, there's nothing but like love and care and support, and you being there and like offering this safe space for me to like hold and be held. And I just remember that being such a profound moment of like connection and transformation and just belief in what's possible in the world. You know what I mean? Like between us, between women, between like really all things. Because I think whether we're talking relationships or trauma or anything, it's like we lose sight of hope and possibility for what things can be.
Dude, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I don't think you've never articulated that to me before.
I don't know if I've ever totally said that.
Yeah, and I was kind of reflecting on, I remember when him and I first started dating and you and I had met, we went for dinner with a group. So you and I knew each other, and the way you showed up, like I'm sure that was super painful, but the way that you showed up was just so graceful and so generous and so loving, and I appreciated that about you so much. I'm like, this human is so epic. Like she's so amazing and she's doing her work. And I always held the vision of like you and I having a friendship, which we do now. And it's so beautiful. And, I did a podcast on this show about you don't know someone until you've gone through a little bit of shit with them.
Yeah.
You don't really know someone until there's been a little bit of a rupture and a little bit of a rub to see how people show up in conflict. And that was like my first impression of you, of like, hey, we're in this and it's a little bit uncomfortable, but like, can we love each other through this and like see this thing through? And we did. And it's just like, you're right. It's like, that's what's possible for women. That's what's possible for relationships. And now we get to reap the benefits of that in our relationship.
Totally. I think that you're absolutely right. Like, how do people show up? And a little bit of that friction allows, same thing in relationship, right? Here's the speed bump. Okay, deeper connection and understanding on the other side, right? How do we get to show up? How do we get to put it all on the table to be like, this is what I value about you and this is what I share. But I love you and thank you for that.
I love you too.
Yeah.
I love you too. So as we wrap, this conversation has been so freaking valuable. I'm so excited for people to listen to this and really get this transmission of like what's possible in relationship, because you're just shining a vision of like, hey guys, it could be like this. And we all have the capacity to get there if we're willing to like look within. So where can we find you? How can we interact with you? Give us a little lowdown.
Yes, please. So website is Samm Hunter, Samm with 2 M's, hunter.com. It's fun. I'm still working that out because it was Samm Murphy and then recently married. Speaking of, you're like, we got engaged October 1st. I'm like, yeah, I got married October 11th. That's like really sneaking up.
Oh, dang.
I know. We're about to have
Holy
1 year.
crap.
I know.
Dude, that literally flew by.
Flew by.
Whoa.
We still don't have our wedding video, but that's the whole thing. Portugal's like, it's been slow over here. I'm like, it's only been a year, but okay. But I was like, don't rush it. I'd rather have something that I love. And then on Instagram, it's Samantha with 2 M's Hunter. And yeah, I'd say that's the main places that I
Beautiful.
hang out. There's something on Facebook, but I need to like update all those things, you know?
Right.
But find me all the places, send me some DMs, send me a message through the website. And yeah, I would love to like hang out, connect, and support. And so honored and excited to be here and offered value. But yeah, I think the biggest thing for everybody is like remembering what's even possible in a relationship. I think that's like the one thing on closing is people will often want a relationship, but not even truly know the like depth of expansion and experience that can be created in a safe container of one.
So true.
Yeah.
The better it gets, the better it gets, the better it gets, the better it gets.
Yeah, so just
So
like
good.
get in there and work all your stuff. Don't blame your partner. I mean, not for everything. I'm only human, okay? You know, I don't get it all right. I'm like, honey, I blame you for everything in my head, but I don't tell you that. And then I come to my senses.
That's so good. Dude, thank you so much for being here. This has been so fun.
Thank you so much.
Yay.